Okay. Or está bem? Yeah?
Yep.
All right. So now it's time to have a little bit of fun with product. You guys ready to see something fun? All right, great. So what we're going to walk through today is really a culmination of some of the great forward-thinking work that Paolo and Michael have gone through earlier in the session, but we're going to make it real by showing you some product. We're going to show it to you in the context of what we already have shipping and give you a little bit of a preview about what's going to come down the pike. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do this in the context of modern IT. What is modern IT? Well, it's just what you've heard in the prior two sessions. Right? It's about moving to, actually, let me pause and let you guys take in the glory of this slide. Right, so it's ugly, it's complicated, but when we get through talking about it, I think you'll see the elegance in what it represents. Right? And what we mean by modern IT is this separation. The separation that is inherent and becomes alive when you pull apart the things that you're doing today. Right? On the bottom of what we're taking a look at here are all your back-end systems, the things that you're using today to create applications. Right? Your on-premises systems, your cloud services, et cetera. And on the top of that are the applications that you're being pushed and driven to create and deliver. In the middle is the microservices layer, right? The microservices that Michael just finished talking about up here. And it's an opportunity to create some stability in your IT organization through abstraction. And what we're doing with that abstraction is enabling you, empowering you to create these microservices that themselves are sophisticated. They're in times complicated. They have their own process. They have their own logic. But they are Lego blocks. They're Lego blocks that your back-end organization can create. And that can create as a services repository, if you will, for the front end of your organization. The front end of your organization is represented across the top in a couple of different categories of applications for your employees, for your suppliers, for your customers, for your partners, et cetera. Right, you'll recognize likely some of these types of applications already. And so that separation is where that elegance comes into play. The separation of back end to front end is that separation of pace. Is slow bad? It is not inherently bad, because SAP can't go down, right? So taking your time with your systems of record, doing the things that you need in order to make sure that those are always available, that is something that you need to maintain in your IT organization. And so slow is okay. But you cannot run the pace of your entire IT operation, the pace of your application delivery, based on the pace of that slow. So we have to speed things up. And that's where the top 2/3 of this allow us to operate. So slow where you need to be and fast where you have to be. And what we do at that layer, and that's where we live. That's the radically different approach to delivering applications at today's pace. Right, so let's talk about this in the context of one of our great customers, Fidelidad. What they're doing today is they are using about 100 different developers and operations personnel inside the platform to create, deliver, manage, et cetera, around 100 different applications. And for those of you familiar with the platform, that's backed up by 1,000 different modules. You can imagine within an organization that size that some of the things that Paolo talked about during the keynote, and being able, that team governance is actually a very critical component. I can't manage this overall environment with simply users and roles, because I'm going to have teams that come into play where maybe I have a team that's focused on customer applications, a team that's focused just on my private applications, so my employee apps, my supplier apps, maybe focused on the BPM layer, the microservices layer, or maybe even just one of these projects. Actually, one of these projects is where we're going to do the rest of the context of the demonstration. But Gonçalo, can you show us a little bit about what this looks like in the platform?
Sure. So something that we've introduced now with Platform 9 is really this construct around managing and governing these big teams around multiple users. So you can see we have here a sample model with tons of developers that resembles a real scenario. And basically with this new teams construct, you're able to model exactly the scenario that our customers have when they grow to scale. So we have teams around the core services that are responsible for those microservices kinds of things. We've got teams for the business processes. We've got teams that manage all the applications in those engagement layers that have end user applications that run on your tablet and so on. For instance, on our particular case, we've modeled here a team for our scenario that we're going to introduce in a bit, which is the vendor apps, where they're responsible for a set of applications for that target audience, right? They reuse some of the services that the core microservices team have built. For instance, we have developers, a delivery manager, which is able to create a deployment plan and manage all of those dependencies. We have the operations guy, which even though you want to remain agile, you want to keep some control. So these are the guys that actually go there and push the button to move things into production. But you can see that a developer in this team is able to consume the services from the core applications. We've got here the reuse of the services in those in that architectural layer, is able to change all the apps in this vendor apps team that were assigned to him, but it's not able to change anything else in the system. So even though it hides a lot of the complexity, it allows you in a very, very easy way to keep agile and give you the chance to make changes on the kind of applications that you want to make.
Got it. Makes sense. So basically, we've introduced a new construct that works in concert with users and roles to easily and scalably manage the RAD footprint inside of your organization. So let's move forward and talk about what the scenario is going to look like for the rest of the demonstration. Let me whittle it down basically to the team, right? The team that we're going to work with, the project team around supplier applications, and skinny that down a little bit so that it makes more sense. We can wrap our heads around it. We're going to do the demonstration in the context of two different applications. One that already exists that we're going to change, and one that we're going to build from scratch. And we're going to use this as an opportunity to preview for you for the first time a phenomenal new SAP connector that we think is going to make a significant difference in large enterprises. So with that, the way that I'm going to start this is the way that we would assume that that customers would use it. So let me set the stage. Gonçalo represents Acme, the distributor. I represent Firebolt. I'm a supplier. The application that I'm going to use is an application that's published by Acme for use by companies like Firebolt to do things like work with the products that I sell through this distributor, work with the orders that are placed by this distributor for my products. And the first thing that I'm going to take a look at is a list of products in my catalog. I take a look at an individual product. I can see the different details on it, and you can see in the upper right-hand corner the pricing that is currently placed on this product. Now, we're going to be changing some of that through this. There's actually a change button in there already. So the price is $22.98. If I were to change this price in the existing application, what's going to happen is there's a custom workflow. There's a custom process that would take over that goes through approvals and individuals and eventually to a manual change inside of SAP. All of those things are horribly boring for a demo, so we're going to rip them out and we're going to go rocket right through SAP and make the change with price directly there. So why don't we go ahead and take a look?
Okay. So, well, this is a sample application that everybody's quite used to. So it has that business process that Sean was mentioning that basically imposes some manual review of the price change. It actually changes price then in SAP, and it starts sub-processes to fulfill the rest of the actions. This application is also built on top of a transparency layer that we've built on top of SAP. So imagining having high load on this app, multiple vendors using the app at the same time, hitting SAP would be an issue, right, in terms of performance, in terms of scale. So we've made it with this connector very easy to basically just model your SAP database right into this platform that allows you to scale and to very easily mesh up data, create some business rules on top, and so on. So what we're going to do here is basically change that business transaction that is currently launching the material price change process. And we're going to basically just take this one out. And what I'm about to show you is how we can easily tap into SAP with our new connector by consuming an SAP BAPI. So when we do this, very, very simply, I can use the credentials provided by my SAP administrator, make sure that everything is running fine in the cloud, and basically hit the choose function button. When this happens, the platform gives me the full list of available APIs in SAP. It allows me to easily discover all the APIs that it has available there. And for instance, for this particular case, I should be looking into something around logistics, logistics-based data, something around materials. So probably I have here a list of BAPIs available that I can consume in my app. And even more interesting than this is that once I click it, I get immediately all the details that SAP hides underneath of what I need to call this API. I would not make not have a clue that, for instance, if I wanted to get the valuation data, which has my standard price somewhere over here, there it is, that I should be looking, of course, at the column STPRS_BAPI, which, well, it's actually a BCD field. So that makes totally sense.
It makes SAP easy to do business with.
Yeah, exactly. So what the engineering team has done here is really fetch right from the bottom of SAP all this hidden information and made it available for a developer, even one that doesn't know SAP, to easily tap into the information he needs. And with the click of a button, well, basically just choose, I want this function. Well, for this particular case, I'm probably looking into something that changes material data. So if I look over here, I can search for the exact API that I want. I've got that other one here. So my SAP guy has told me, yeah, you should call that one to update the price. So it has all that information around sales data, storage location, and that it is the valuation that we want to change. So with this in mind, I'm just going to pick the one I need, hit finish, and this is really where the next part of the magic is happening. We're fetching from SAP the exact definition of this API, and with the click of a button, making it available in the platform for us to consume. So thank you, R&D.
Exactly. So what we've seen with the new SAP connector is our ability to, with simple credentialing into your existing SAP instance, do a massive auto-discovery of the BAPIs and ZPAPIs that are going on inside of that environment. I can scroll through, I can take a look at the documentation as published by SAP, find the exact service calls that I want, and bring them into the platform. And as they come into the platform, the inputs, the outputs, the data types, everything about that service that is required is pulled over into and is used as a standard service. And so you can see basically while Gonçalo ties up the loose ends here, you know, what we've been able to do is actually pretty impressive, and we haven't had to call anybody on the SAP side. Right? So the other thing that's an interesting note as we go through and do this is, even though we removed that complicated process, we don't have to remove that complicated process. Right? We can, with the constructs of this connector and with the full power of process and logic that we have built into the platform, allow you to create multi-level, complex, sophisticated transactions inside of SAP, meaning that I can start a transaction, I can do multiple pieces inside of SAP, and then commit or roll back all at once. And SAP is handling that inside of their transactional integrity system in and of itself. And so if you think about what you would have to do from a web services perspective, if that is how you were accessing SAP, is all of that additional effort, you would have to create that on your own. Right? So what we really attempted to do is look at SAP through the lens of enterprise IT and the challenges there. And truly try to create a connector that is worthy of being called RAD. And as Gonçalo mentioned, I think that the engineers have done a fantastic job. So let's use it.
We've made our change. Maybe now we want to expose it to someone else.
Yeah.
What do you think about it?
I think that's a great idea. Reminding me what the script is. So at this point, what we've done is we've modeled one use case. And the use case is we pulled it into the application so that I can click that change button. I can type a new price in there and hit go, and that's going to go directly into SAP and make that change. But that's only modeling one use case. The other use case is if I am Firebolt and I have a massive pricing change that's coming up, I don't want to sit in that application and go click, 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 click. I want to be able to automate batch processing of pricing changes. And the way to do that in the modern age, in microservices, as has been mentioned, is through a RESTful API. And so why don't we go through and take a peek at what that looks like inside the platform now.
Well, something important here, we've been able to expose REST APIs for a while, but as we've seen, they've become pretty prominent in the last few years. So we've made this really good decision of bringing it in right to the red world to make it really fast so that developers wouldn't have to go down to that extra level of detail in code. So with a simple click of a button, I've got here already my REST API exposed. It's got SSL built in. It's got basic authentication by default. We could do our own custom authentication, OAuth, whatever you want. And just as you're used to, it's basically a matter of fact of creating here a new method. Let's call it product change price. And by this, I'm basically going to reuse the API that I just created to change the price, and I'm going to expose it out to the world.
So I think one of the interesting things of note here is that we've created the service one time, we're using it inside of an OutSystems application, and now we're going to use the same exact service exposed through REST, which means that if I change that core service at all, both sides of it get updated on that, which I think is very important. Another thing to remember about RESTful services, RESTful APIs, is that they are lightweight, which is great. They seem simple, which is also great. But there are some challenges to RESTful APIs, which is that there is no contract, right? We got, with SOAP, we knew exactly what the inputs, exactly what the outputs are. With REST, we have to rely on the documentation ability and interest from the developers that are publishing this. We have a lot of people that like writing documentation? No hint, there's always one person. All right, that lies. And so since it is so important for us to have this RESTful API documentation such that I, on the Firebolt side, can use this very easily and properly in my application, what do we do to make that process easier?
Well, you still need to make a right click with the mouse, but with that right click, you just get to open the documentation. And the platform automatically generates all of this documentation. You can share this with your end customer, with your end user for this API, which will be a developer most probably. But you can see exactly where the endpoints are available. You can see exactly what is the kind of information that needs to be sent over to this API. You could even generate a native SDK out of this structured API and use it in an existing app. So we've made it really, really easy to expose an API, reusing one of your microservices, create the documentation for it, and put it out in the wild in a way that it scales, it performs, and hides away all the complexity in the backend.
Gotcha. So, absolutely. So, everything that we attempt to do is to make hard things powerfully simple in the platform. And this is just another example of our continued commitment to doing that. And these RESTful services, since they are services utilized via OutSystems platform, they're performant, they're scalable, they're secured, they're monitored, just like the SAP transactions we created, and just like this piece of REST over here.
So we've done the REST API. Maybe now we want to actually change the product price to make sure that everything is really working.
Keep you honest?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's keep you honest. So to do that, right, as you recall, we plucked out that one pricing API. We pulled it into our product, which I'm about to go through here. But before we do that, wouldn't it be a fantastic idea for us to spend a little bit of time in the SAP GUI?
In the SAP world?
Yeah, I think that'd be fantastic.
Everybody likes that, right?
Exactly.
So well, with 3 clicks, I created a REST API. Let's see how many clicks I need to get into seeing the price in SAP.
Exactly. I mean, we could make fun of this interface all day long. Actually, let's do that. So who thought this was a good idea? Let's count the clicks, right? And this is because Gonçalo has practiced this 1 or 2 times. So
yeah,
he knows
the
exactly.
Product 1711?
Uh-huh.
Really?
Yeah, you knew that. You knew 1711 off the top of your head?
Yeah. And
All
now
right.
I click this green button over here, down here. There you go. Okay, we've got our product, and hopefully on this screen, if I input some more magic numbers, I'm getting to the right product in SAP. There it is. Right?
There we go. All right, so now we've proven that the before value is $22.98. And so let's work with the recently revamped product catalog, right? My Firebolt supplier hat back on. I go back into this particular product.
And now I just know what failed in the demo. We need to stream it over up there. So we're safe from now on.
Fantastic. Good thing I was paying attention that it wasn't actually displaying. We good?
Yeah.
All right, fantastic. So I've clicked into a premise that wasn't part of it. I've clicked into the product that I, as Firebolt, sell through Acme, and I'm taking a look at the same screen that I was looking at before. I click on change. I'm looking at the same screen I was looking at before, because the only thing that's changed is what happens when I click that button. Now, I'm a student of supply and demand, and I, at Firebolt, know that these particular cables are in short supply, which means that I'm going to do what any business would do, and I'm going to be greedy, and I'm going to take advantage of the situation. I'm going to jack up the price. So I know that problem, so I'm going to change it to something that's easy to recognize, 3, 4, 5, 6. And one thing that you'll also notice is this price change impact graph is automatically recalculating based on the number of outstanding orders that I have with the distributor and what this new price will do to the revenue for my organization. So I'm going to click on submit, and that's going to go back and fire off the SAP service that Gonçalo just put in play. Now, one time through SAP GUI isn't enough. So what we're going to do now that we said that the new pricing is taking effect immediately, why don't we go back into the SAP GUI and click the 17.5 clicks to see if this was successful.
Okay, let's try that.
There we go.
There you go.
3, 4, 5, 6. All right, what should we do now, Gonçalo?
Well, I would say that we're not good enough with this app, right? So maybe thinking about watching your past orders.
I'm never satisfied, so give me that iPad back.
Okay. So let me just bring this one over here. There you go.
Perfect. So basically, what's we're gonna switch a little bit, and I'm going to be the never satisfied supplier, Firebolt. Great work you just did on the product stuff. Awesome. I'm looking at orders. This is great that I can see individual orders, but what I want to do is actually make a business request. Right, so Michael talked about extending dev ops to business. This is an exact example of that. Right, I'm business that's outside of the walls of the organization, and what I want to do is be able to go directly back into the engineering organization that has created this application, make a suggestion, let them know what I would like to see. So when I'm looking at these orders, I'm going to click a button down here, because what we've been using is some of the new functionality released in Platform 9 in OutSystems Now. Right, as you recall, OutSystems Now is our enterprise app store, right? So I log into it one time and I get all the applications that Enterprise IT has enabled for me to see. But it's also that bridge down to the native device, and includes other interesting functionality like app feedback. Right, we've been able to do app feedback for a while, but we took a new spin, we took a new look at it in the context of a mobile device. Right, when I'm using a tablet, I don't have the same full keyboard available to me. I don't have the same kind of workflow. And so what we did was we changed it such that when I want to file feedback, what happens is I'm now given a palette, and I draw directly on the screen and say, yeah, I love your detail view here, but I'm going to write all over that and say what I would love to see, you guessed it, is a dashboard. And I'm going to do that, and basically in rough form, really rough form, I'm going to tell them exactly what it is that I want. Now, there's no way that they're going to possibly understand what that means, so I need to give them more context. Normally what I would do is I would grab my keyboard and type a bunch of stuff out so they would understand what that is, but I'm on a tablet and I'm lazy and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to hit the button over here that says, that's going to record my voice saying that I would love to see a dashboard that lets me look at high-level orders, et cetera. And I don't really like the look and feel of the application that you have right now, so why don't you spruce that up? Okay, thanks. File that, send that over as feedback directly from, right? So Firebolt, I'm not even inside the organization, I'm using the application, I've created that user story and I've shot it over to Gonçalo and his team inside. So why don't we take a look at what that looks like inside the platform?
Yeah, so over here I got that feedback. I know exactly what Sean wants. I know exactly which version of the app you was using. If this was for a QA team, for instance, to submit change requests, defects on the app, I would be able to troubleshoot and change the screen immediately. And I'm also able to listen to your...
It's going to record my voice saying...
Nobody here needs to hear me twice.
A dashboard that lets me look at...
Your funky comments. So this is great, but I would love to have a little bit more detail on exactly what you want, right? This is a big capability.
It is a big capability. So app feedback is perfect to capture the entire context around small to medium-sized change requests. It's also really good at opening the dialogue for these larger ones. And so what we're going to do is, now I'm still Firebolt. Gonçalo is now business analyst over at Acme, and we're going to have a conversation now about what I want, right? And it's going to start with a blank screen that basically has, this is the kind of look and feel that I'd like to see for this. And then it's going to end something like, I want now.
Really? Well, we'll need to see a little bit about that. I think we can get it. Actually, you do want a chart, right? Everybody wants a chart, so I have quite used to do charts.
Right, exactly. I'm in management on the supplier side. Give me charts.
Okay, so let's see how we're going to do this. What we're doing now is really creating a new app from scratch based on some corporate templates that Acme had already defined for me. So something that we also introduced now in Platform 9 Amsterdam is the ability that when you create a new app, and let's call it orders, when we create this new app, you're able to choose from a set of application templates defined usually by your architecture team, by your front-end teams, exactly with the template that you want to start this new app. This could be used, for instance, we've seen this being used for creating templates for core services kind of apps. So those modules that stay in the microservices layer already with pre-configured security, pre-configured APIs that you can get to, and so on. So it's like a good way to start one of those bottom pieces. Or we can have the engagement app templates, which already have my corporate branding, which already have the set of services that I can reuse from other apps to fulfill my user interfaces and so on. So in this particular case, we're going to choose this very well branded Next Step app that allows me to start this new app already with the predefined template that I've chosen. So over here, well, simple template. It has nothing but the default template for my corporation. So I could start creating my app immediately. I'm probably just going to start by creating a cool entry screen to make sure that users running this through the our web channel are able to properly access my app, make their login, and kind of have our own corporate branding here.
Is that supposed to be us?
Sorry?
Is that supposed to be us?
No.
Which one am I? All right.
All right.
So, where we go from here is, it's a race. Gonçalo thinks I talk too much, and he's not alone. But we're going to race, and what we're going to see is if in the time that I can describe for you our new modern UI framework called Silk UI, if in that time Gonçalo can turn that low-fidelity prototype into a working, functioning dashboard from scratch.
Can I just introduce one minor feature before that?
All right.
Now, with every platform, we get you this. This is the superpowers that allow you to build this really fast.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Okay, so now we can start.
Yes. I don't even know what that would do to my hair. All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
And go. So on this side over here, Gonçalo's going to, and I won't just talk really fast. On this side over here, Gonçalo's going to actually create the dashboard that we started with. On the left-hand side, there's going to be some backup information about Silk UI. Silk UI you can think of as those of you who have been privileged enough to live in the CSS world of modern UI design lately have probably attempted to use frameworks like Bootstrap or Ionic. You can think of Silk UI as Bootstrap meets Rad. We take the nasty stuff out and we keep the good stuff. That's what we have a tendency to do. So what Silk UI is about, and the reason it's named Silk, right, is because the user interfaces that we're creating are fluid, they're responsive, they're flowing, they're engaging, etc., hence Silk. So what we've done is we had a large team go through and think about the patterns that needed to exist in UIs today. Right, those patterns are in categories like content and structure and responsive, et cetera, and we're going to go through a couple of those here in a minute. But what we tried to do was take a survey of all the applications, the user interfaces, the ones that are in your pocket right now, or if you happen to be checking your email right now, maybe in your hand, and take the best and the brightest of those patterns and pull them into Silk UI, starting with structure. Structure is, as it tends to indicate by name, the structure of the application, where I will hang the content, but what the structure of the overall application is. And if you've been watching over my head, what you've already seen is that Gonçalo has taken some three-column pieces over, and then he's actually creating some substructure, et cetera, as he goes along as well. The next piece is content. This is the stuff that goes inside of the structure. It is the content for display and how we want it displayed, right? And so we have a lot of different content patterns like accordion and alert and buttons and bullets and boxes, et cetera, that make it very easy, drag and drop right onto the canvas to tell the platform how to display the content inside the structure that you set forth for it. And the next piece is controls. How do I interact with that content? And these controls were taken in very much a touch-friendly way, right? You can think of it as mobile first, but that's actually going by the wayside because it is any application on any device, right? And these controls are very modern and they're very easy to use, and they work whether you're touching them on the screen or whether you're working with it on a desktop or a laptop. And then the last piece is responsive. And this allows you distinct control over the experience on the different devices and form factors that you're going to be delivering this application to. What it allows us to do is say, I want to specifically break the columns of this just like this on my phone, but then I want to change it a little bit for how it displays on the tablet, and then I want to open it wide open for on the desktop. What it allows me to do is not just take for granted what responsive web design is going to do for me, but I actually take control of it. I have additional patterns for, oh dear, I have additional patterns for being able to say what gets loaded and when. So if it's just the screen and as I scroll, then it loads more information. And one of the things that didn't actually take a whole lot of research is to find out what the natural culprit of low-performing mobile apps happens to be, and that's network. And so what we decided to do was implement server-side responsive. It's also called REST. It's also called adaptive. And what that means is that our server is smart enough to know what type of device is asking for the page. And we use that information to construct exactly what that device needs. What images, what resolutions, what different pieces of that need to be sent over. I send just that over, and the client is responsible for rendering just that. So I've lowered the amount of time I spend on the network, and I've lowered the amount of time I've spent rendering that. And he's got his arms folded, and I'm not done yet.
What? Still talking? Come on.
I had some really good stuff that I hadn't said yet.
Really?
No, I hadn't. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to compare. We're going to compare the low fidelity to what Gonçalo just created. So I'm going to go into the new orders application, which is my dashboard, right? I'm back at Firebolt, and this is the first time I'm getting an opportunity to look at this in comparison to the quick I want in apparently 5 minutes is now. And so this is what we have. We have the visibility into my orders, how I'm doing year to date, et cetera, et cetera. Take a look at my pending orders, and there it is. There's my chart. And if I look on the right-hand side, he used some clever accordion patterns, and inside of that, a way for me to just swing through and take a look at the different products that I sell that are top sellers through this particular distributor. And so this interface is, as we talked about, very fluid. It's very engaging. I want to punch these buttons. I want to run around inside of here and learn more about this application. I even have a contact us in here that if I were on a phone and clicked that, it would start dialing somebody over at Acme for me to have an actual conversation with. So you can see we went pretty fast. Well, one of us did. Went pretty fast, and in I don't know, I wasn't paying attention. I bet it was about 4 minutes. Went from this prototype to an actual functioning dashboard. And you'll notice one thing that we didn't do because of microservices and because of templates. He spent 0 time worrying about where he was going to get the data that was going to feed this UI. It was already in the template. It was already in the microservices. My back-end people had already put that together for me. And so all he was doing was weaving this together, not to take anything away from the amazing things that you've done. But all he was doing was weaving the different pieces. Oh, that's right, it was the bonsai. Was weaving that into this. So again, I would love to give kudos to the engineering team that put Silk UI together, because I think it is a phenomenal, game-changing way to create user interface.
Thank you.
So I don't have the fun clip art that Paolo did on If We're Done Yet, but we're not. Because the app is live, do we walk away? We'd love to, but we can't because of rules like 2 seconds and people fade off, 4 seconds and they're gone. So what do we do now? And so what we're gonna get a peek into now is functionality that is in engineering currently, that is on the release train for our upcoming fall release, and it is all about analytics of the applications. What you have already seen us do in the platform that you have running inside of your organizations today, or that you're using today, is a set of analytics information and dashboards that gives you a fair amount of detail about what's going on inside of each of your apps, from high level down to the actual services. What we're doing in upcoming release is twofold. One is we're punching up the dashboards, bringing forward more information, bringing it at your fingertips, and making it actionable. And the other thing that we're doing is we're also dialing up the amount of information that we automatically instrument your applications to send to the platform. Right? And so what that means is I'm gathering new and interesting things like, what carrier is this application experience coming across? What type of network is it coming across? What type of device is it coming across, et cetera, et cetera. And so with the new granularity that I have, here what I'm taking a look at is my entire application portfolio. And on the left-hand side are all of my apps and how much they're being used and what their performance is. Upper right-hand, I'm taking a look at the overall usage. How many users, how often are they coming in there? One of the ones that I think is particularly interesting is under response times breakdown. Server, network, client. Right, that's a level of granularity we can't offer you today that we will be offering you in the next release. And what that means is, remember the conversation we just had about Silk. We're trying to minimize the network time. We're trying to minimize the render time on the client. And this is a way of checking where those bottlenecks are. Right? And if it's server, we'll get to that in a second, where I can show you what the server load looks like. It gets really interesting as I drill into more detail on a specific application. Right? So the vendor piece that we just put together now, right? I can see the actions on the left-hand side of the preparation, the change price, save product, right? The ones that Gonçalo just went through and showed. I can see a response time breakdown for this particular application, and I can see that my network time is a little high. So maybe the application, not the new one that he built with Silk, of course, but the old one that was already built, maybe I need to spend more time in optimizing the amount of traffic that's sent over the network. I can see the top OSs, so I know what a demographic of my customer base looks like. Top locations, and then response times by each of the different pieces of each of the different services that are called within that application. That's end user experience side. Now I want to flip over to server side, because if I notice that the server is the issue, it's not the client, it's not the network, but in order to create a highly performing application, I want to dig into server. And again, this is high level, looking at my entire portfolio, and I see a response times breakdown here that is focused on the things that the server cares about. Where am I spending time in slow queries, in consumed integrations and extensions, et cetera, et cetera. The whole purpose behind all of these portlets and inside of this overall dashboard for analytics is to give you and your precious development teams exactly the guidance that they need to go and make the most impactful change to the portfolio that they can. And as I drill down in here, I start to see at the application level things that wouldn't normally pop up in my mind as I'm developing it. If I create a transaction that's 500 milliseconds, I don't think that that's a long time, because what I'm not thinking about is how many times that transaction is called in my application and how many times that application is used across my customer base. So when I have that multiplier effect in place, that really raises itself to the top, and I realize I need to go spend my time in there. Or if I have a LinkedIn Get User Profile that actually fires on every single one of my screens, I can instead encapsulate that inside of a web block, cache that information, and make that particular piece of performance degradation go away. Right, so what we are trying to do is feed you directly the information that you need in order to make the experience, right? So we talked about making great UIs. We talked about reaching into back-end systems to make those great UIs actually do something cool. And now we're talking about another piece of user experience, which is making sure that it's snappy, it's responsive, that the applications do what they're supposed to do in the amount of time that people will allow them to do that. So something to think about and look forward to in the next couple of months. All right, so to bring us in for a landing, the summary is going to go through what we've just talked about, what we've just shown in the context of the kind of capabilities matrix that Paolo went through in his keynote, the piece that he built out to throughout his presentation. Right, so we showed services in this one. In particular, we showed SAP, but just to highlight things that have happened in Platform 9 is all of those logos at the bottom except for Jira and Asana. Those are new with the Amsterdam release. The one that we spent the time on today is inside of SAP. And any of these connectors that we will continue to provide, that we will continue to write publish, maintain, update, et cetera, in the Forge, will have applicability, will light up the blocks across the entirety of the application lifecycle at the services layer. The next thing to talk about is databases. With Platform 9, we introduced two different database connectors. One is MySQL, and another very interesting one is DB2. And what we have seen since the release of this DB2 connector is a significant amount of legacy modernization activity going on in our customer base, right? Because this allowed, for the first time, in a very clean and effective way, a way of getting into the back-end data that's been there and collecting rust, and we need to bring it out and do some fun and interesting things with it, with the applications, whether they be micro apps or actual apps going forward. All right, so the next thing that we did talk about, right, is the consumption and exposing of services. Right, those two icons on the bottom are the new icons for services inside the platform, and you'll notice that this is applicable not just at the services layer, but actually at the workflow layer as well, because we're using those services not simply as a pass-through. I'm not just taking this one API and then using it over here. I'm taking this API and this API and this API with this database call and this other piece, weaving it together with custom logic and process, and then making that a service. Right, so I'm getting workflow benefits, the full weight of the workflow benefits of the platform across all of the different areas. Another thing that we introduced is aggregates in Platform 9. What we introduced in Amsterdam were performance and usability improvements that was great feedback from the field. Right, so we're lighting up a lot, business logic, workflow, and database in the development side, making it extraordinarily easy for you to create interesting visualizations and interesting dealings with the back-end data. And you'll see us do some other interesting things with aggregates coming forward. Silk, one of my favorites. And that one lights up all across development and in QA, right? Because what it allows me to do is these interfaces, and the thing that I didn't mention is that there was absolutely no code, you noticed, that went into that dashboard. There was plenty of CSS on the back end. There's plenty of optimized work that we've done to make sure that the CSS that's generated is easy to render on all these different devices. But there is significant advantage there. OutSystems Now. This is all about the native functionality. Enterprise App Store, bridge to native across the entirety of the application lifecycle. And managing teams. As the enterprise grows, right, as you remember the end of Paolo's presentation, it was all about how can we continue to scale from 1 app to 2 apps to 10 apps up to 100 and 200 apps. Right, the size of your organization is going to grow, and we need to be able to light up all layers inside of management. And then lastly, analytics. I have to be able to take a peek at what's going on with my application, how it's being adopted, how it's being used, when it is slow, when it's operating appropriately, and so that lights up the entire analyze phase. And so what you're seeing is, if I really went through these quickly, you would see flashing blocks all over the place here, because what we're focused on is an entire great RAD platform. We are not just focused on making it easy to develop something. We're not just focused on making it easy to deploy something. We are focused on making sure that we cover the entirety of the application lifecycle. Right, so I thank you very much for your attention. I hope you enjoyed what you saw today during the demonstration.